Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We are here every Sunday night. We've already been here for about 45 minutes. This is the third article in the sequence of, I think, 7 for tonight. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about America. America founded on a creed, not history. Ran across an article online by Annie Holmquist, and she was writing the day after 4th of July. Started off with a couple of quotes. One is from the English writer G.K. Chesterton, writing in his book, What I Saw in America. And he says, quote, America is the only nation in the world that is founded on creed. Then there was a quote from Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of Great Britain. She reacted to this idea with a little different response. She said, Europe is a product of history. America is a product of philosophy. You see, America's creed, Chesterton explained, is set forth with dogmatic and even theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. Perhaps the only piece of practical politics that is also theoretical politics and also great literature. The creed, the philosophy to which Chesterton and Thatcher refer, is the protection of unalienable rights. Now, I prefer inalienable rights, but unalienable is just as correct and has become the term of choice in recent years. I like inalienable. The Founding Fathers were heavily influenced by John Locke's ideas on natural rights. In Locke's The Second Treatise on Civil Government, he explains natural rights and the purpose of government, saying every man has a property in his own person. And this property nobody has any right to but himself. The labor of his body, he went on to say, and the work of his hands are properly his. The great and chief end, therefore, of men's uniting into commonwealths and putting themselves under governments is the preservation of their property. Locke has taken personal and economic liberty and he has intertwined them. And these are the rights that Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence immortalized as unalienable, writing, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is an 18th century idea, not a 21st century idea. It means that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. You're not supposed to have the right to run around being happy all the time, but that there's a personal satisfaction in the life that you live. Today we start the education of our children somewhere after the 17th and 18th centuries. We consider all that went before unnecessary. Jefferson and others were building off of the classics, the philosophical, and in many cases practical applications of that philosophy that brought about the thinking of this 17th and 18th century. Some states actually start with Reconstruction today, meaning from 1865 and moving forward. I lived in North Carolina for a while, and the state education system wanted to go in that direction. I can't remember whether it was a vote of the people or just, the governor or whatever, but they didn't. I don't think they did it. But you can bet money that if they brought it up, even though it didn't happen, one day it will. That was the goal. And what is their reasoning here? Well, they'll tell you that there's just so much information, and you just have to stop somewhere and start someplace. Well, why start after 1865, just with Reconstruction? Well, if you start sooner, it might put the lie to our current fascination with multiculturalism, socialism, and now progressivism. But I digress. Chesterton is referencing historical reality. The great nations of the world are products of dominionism. Strong men rising up to subjugate and or collect people in order to either survive or to dominate. Russia, China, Persia, we call it Iran, Turkey, which is the Roman and Byzantine empires, Europe, which eventually became Roman as well, and other smaller, less notable nations. Only in these United States of America can we see a people group gathering around to set up principles and laws and promises that embody the natural and divine rights of all men, choosing for themselves these principles by which they are agreeing to be governed. Time and circumstance, largely survival and power, brought together the entity that we now call the United Kingdom or Great Britain, a power that once ruled the world, a power that was threatened in history only by France, but a power that was ultimately overcome by 13 ragamuffin colonies thousands of miles away in a world the British never knew nor understood. In his book, To Secure These Rights, The Declaration of Independence and Constitutional Interpretation, law professor Scott Gerber explains how the natural rights principles embodied in the Declaration of Independence are not above and beyond the Constitution. They are at the heart of the Constitution. With certainty, Gerber writes, to secure natural rights is therefore why the Constitution was enacted, and to secure natural rights is how the Constitution should be interpreted. That is the original intent of the founders. Holding to America's creed and affirming original intent matters greatly. All three branches of our government increasingly ignore the natural rights basis of the Constitution, and as a result, our rights as individuals are steadily eroding. George Will wrote in law professor Randy Barnett's book, Our Republican Constitution, Securing the Liberty and Sovereignty of We the People. He wrote that governments are instituted to secure our pre-existing rights, not to bestow them. Government can derive many powers from the consent of the majority, but not all exercises of those powers are, simply because they flow from majority, just. Wills goes on to emphasize the phrase, we the people, as opposed to we the government. Our Constitution specifically limits government. It extends to government translating the desires of a majority into laws and policies that actually conflict with government's stated and limited powers. In this, he is referring to the vaguely defined social good. Where do you want to live? You want to live in a world where your rights are granted by an elected body? Or do you want to live in a world where your rights are inalienable or unalienable? And should your inalienable rights not be secure, where's that take us? Now, we don't understand these philosophical concepts, and it would give us a headache to spend any time trying to parse them and understand them fully. But we ought to know a little bit about who we are, why we are, how we got here, and what makes us what we are and have. In 2016, the Ipsos Public Affairs people did a poll. They checked 2,000 people, all of whom self-identified as American citizens, and they asked them a series of questions about their government. One of those questions was, can you name the current Speaker of the House of Representatives? Can you do that? I could not. I see his face. I hear his voice. He ran for vice president. I know he's a representative from Michigan or Minnesota. I know he considers himself a conservative. I know that he is able to blend. He was staunchly against Trump in the beginning, and now he's there with him. They seem to be working kind of hand in glove, although, you know, it's not master-servant relationship. But I couldn't think of his name. Isn't that awful? I can't think of it now. I thought I'd written it down, but I guess I didn't. Only 1/3 of the people questioned knew Benjamin Franklin once served as an important diplomat. Only 35% of those surveyed answered all 5 of the randomly selected questions that were asked of them. Interestingly, Republicans scored higher than Democrats and independents. 40% of Republicans answered all 5 of their questions correctly. Only 35 independents were able to do that. And the Democrats, only 33%. Now, to pass the U.S. citizenship exam, applicants must correctly answer at least 60% of up to 10 civics and government questions asked by a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service officer who's choosing from a list of 100. They're going to be asked 10 questions. They've got to get 6 of them right. All 100 of these questions are provided on the USCIS website, along with the answers. This writer carefully researched the full list of questions and found the following 5 to be most likely to trip up test takers. You ready for this? Without looking, how many amendments are there to our Constitution? I thought about it and I thought it's somewhere in the 20s. I thought 18 to 22, somewhere in that range. The answer? 27. The 27th Amendment was the first one to be proposed. It was the last one to be ratified. It governs congressional salaries. It says that no law may take effect that increases or decreases the salary of members of Congress without taking or from taking effect until the start of the next term for that representative. It was passed in 1789, and that's the most recent. Number 28 is making the rounds of states. Do you know what it is? It's not an official amendment. It's a grassroots amendment, driven no doubt by the internet. It's not even overtly credible, but it sure gets a lot of press. And that amendment is suggested to be that Congress shall make no law that does not apply to them. Can I get an amen? Secondly, if both the president and the vice president can no longer serve, who then becomes president? Well, we kind of all know that one, don't we? It's the leader of the House, the guy that I couldn't remember. But by the time I got to this part, I could remember. His name is Paul Ryan, which you knew. Number 3, the Federalist Papers supported the passage of the U.S. Constitution. Name one of the writers of the Federalist Papers. I thought Jefferson wrote the Declaration. Surely he was involved in the Federalist Papers. No. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. John Jay. You know what he was, right? Alexander Hamilton, I think, got shot to death over a woman. Or shot somebody else, I can't remember. These were not all that great guys. Number 4, what territory did the United States buy from France in 1803? That's easy. Right? Jumped right into my head. Louisiana Purchase. I didn't look it up. Am I right? Write to me. Email me or something. And who was president during World War I? I said Harding. And I said that because my father was named after him. Warren G. Harding. My grandmother liked him. He was a Republican. She was in the South, South Carolina, Jonesville, South Carolina, right up the road. But she liked him. But that isn't him. It was Woodrow Wilson. He was there 2 terms just before Harding. Served during the war. Interesting things. History. Situations. Philosophy that drive our life even today.